Hello, fellow splitting geniuses. Welcome to another episode of Splitting Smart, where Heather and I have candid and informative discussions with divorce and well-being professionals. And today we will be chatting with one of New York's top family lawyer and diving into chats about custody in divorce, the divorce do's and don'ts, how to best be prepared to work with your lawyer, which is very important. And to add a little twist is how much a sexless marriage factors into a final decision to divorce. I am Lila Aiken Ali, a divorcee, a divorce coach, and the founder of Split.fyi.
And I'm Heather Steer, a divorcee, a CDFA, a divorce coach, and the co-founder of Split.fyi. Today, we're going to be talking with Morghan Richardson, a family law attorney licensed to practice in New York, Maryland, and Washington, D.C. She is also a divorcee, which gives her an innate ability to empathize and relate with her clients' emotions, needs, and genuine fears. And besides practicing law, Morghan juggles time with her kids, PTA meetings, and teaching law students at Pace University. I don't know how you do it all. But it's a pleasure to have you here today, Morghan. I'm really excited about this conversation.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
So one of the things, and I mean, there's so many things I'd love to chat. We both would love to chat to you about. I am an adamant follower of your social media because, first of all, you really debunked this theory about how lawyers can be really scary. You're definitely not scary. You're not scary. In fact, you're funny, and you add a nice sense of humor to a lot of this, and you really go over a lot of things that, you know, people are feeling, and it's relatable. So love that. But one of the things that really stood out was what you said around custody. And you said, you know, custody is only a word, and the relationship you have with your kid is what's so important. So can we dive a little, let's start there, because it's one of the things that, as you know, is the biggest fear when you're going through a divorce is that custody battle.
Absolutely. And thank you so much. I love getting compliments about my social media. That's so nice. I do try to be approachable. I think it depends, though, on where you're sitting at the table, whether or not you find me frightening, because I have been called, you know, a barracuda or a shark or all of those types of things. But I like to think of myself more as a problem solver, and I do like to sort of speak plain English. I think that everything needs to be effectively communicated in a very clear way to clients, because this is their first possible experience happening. And sorry, I'm getting a call. Because this is our first experience with the legal system a lot of times, and it's overwhelming. And so we want to make sure that everybody sort of understands what's going on. But with respect to custody, especially, as you mentioned, I'm divorced, I have kids. I'm also, I have a child with an ex-boyfriend, so that was not a divorce, but it's a custody dispute type situation. And I see it all the time too on a professional level. People will be fighting to the death because they want that word. They want custody. It has to be sole custody. It must be this amount of custody. And really then they start to forget what it is that they're looking for here. What is important about custody? It's really the access that you have to the child so that you can foster your relationship with the child, because they won't be kids forever. They're going to turn 18. And in so many cases, I see them age out of that word custody, because once they're 18, it no longer applies. And then they don't want to talk to one or the other parent. They just don't want to talk to them because that behavior has been so toxic to them that they don't want to participate in that relationship. And to me, that's tragic.
So tragic. Yeah. I was going to say that it's an interesting thing, because it feels like we need to possess something. It's like a possession, and our children aren't possessions. And really, we forget the fact that they just need to be loved. And even if it means that you're not seeing them 50-50, every time you do see them, you can foster them with all that love, that protection, the thing that you're supposed to do as a parent, and just know that that's all it needs. It's not about this like checks and balance of, if you put 50% in, you're going to get 50% of the love or whatever. It's hard to remember that. It's really hard to remember that. In fact, some cases, if you see them less, they might love you more, because then you
And it allows for a more dedicated time. Like if you're really only seeing them 20% of the time, you usually, I see with my clients that they'll actually allocate that 20% of the time to their child versus
Right.
for granted that they're always around, right?
Exactly. And this sort of ties into with something that I tell everyone this, and I also especially talk to my kids about this. And it's this notion that love is not a pie. Like if you have a slice of the pie, there's less pie. But if you have some love, there's not less love. Love will create more love instead. It doesn't. So I talk to clients about that, especially when they're struggling with like somebody has a new partner or something on the scene, there's a new boyfriend or girlfriend on the other side. And maybe it's really hard, but their kid really likes that person. It's not going to harm your kid to have more love. It's not going to take away your piece of that pie because it's not a pie. So we have a lot of those kinds of conversations too.
Yeah, and that is a hard one because I wonder that. I mean, you hear a lot of, oh, I want to put it in the order that they can't introduce a significant other. I want, and how do you navigate around that to steer them in a way that it's a tough one because,
Yeah. I mean, I think most judges, at least the ones here in New York City, are not inclined to put those kinds of limitations on people. And they will give a long speech about how you're getting divorced, that's terminating your relationship. Of course, there are going to be new relationships. And to a certain degree, you have to trust the other parent enough to believe that they're going to introduce someone who is reasonable and kind and all of the things that you would want for your child's experience. And that's just a very difficult conversation. I feel like a lot of what I do, it's legal, but it's also, there's a little bit, the psychology behind it. There's a little bit of therapy that goes into it, I'm sure. Same for you guys with the coaching and everything. It's hard line to walk sometimes.
You're often hearing the things you don't want to hear. That's the hardest bit.
Yeah, that's true.
And having to give up control of something that you've had control of. Like I see it in particular with stay-at-home moms who they're having to give up control and trust their partner or their ex-partner to make good decisions around the kids. And it's hard to coach people through that as you do in your daily job.
Yeah.
People.
I mean, I talk to them in those situations. I talk to them about how basically you're presenting one type of lifestyle. There are so many different ways to live. How you live, the things that you like, your preferences, how you organize things, everything like that. And then what the other parent is doing at their house. And that is presenting an alternative. It's one of millions of alternatives, and they'll get to see it firsthand. And hopefully they're going to decide what's right for them. And maybe it'll be a little bit of how you do it. And maybe it'll be a little bit of how the other parent does it. And hopefully they'll come up with their own unique way on how they're going to live. That's really all you can do. It's complicated and hard because you do feel that like, I made this child, I don't want to let them go. But at the same time, you have to learn how to love with sort of an open hand so you're not crushing them.
Right. Okay. So on that note, and, not just around custody, but what is, and this is a golden question, and I'm sure there's a lot in this, but what's the best way for someone to be prepared when they're, deciding to use a lawyer? And what would you like to see in a client when they're coming, there's so much, obviously they're emotional and they have to go through those things, but in the sense of being prepared, to work with a lawyer, what are the things that you would tell a clientele?
I think there's probably 1,000 or more articles on Google about how to get ready for your divorce and that kind of thing. And I don't want to be redundant or repetitive, but for me, one of the first things I'll talk to them about is sort of what is their goal? What are the things that are the most important to them? Sometimes people will mention like, I really want to keep the apartment, or I really want to keep the house, or, they'll say certain things that they name as their goals. And I keep a notepad with my notes on that, because later on, as the case is getting heated, people can lose their way and they might not remember what it is that they really wanted to achieve. And we'll have a point where maybe we're going to settle, but they've forgotten that actually the settlement that is on the table looks a lot like what you told me the first time I ever saw you. So I'll try to bring that back to them. Another good tip that I have is really looking at what are the financial disclosure requirements for the court. You may be looking to mediate. Maybe you're looking to do a collaborative agreement. Or maybe you think litigation might be in your future, or you don't really know. But if you know what the financial disclosure requirements are, you can start gathering those documents specific to your jurisdiction, because it's different in every state. So it's easy to find on courts' websites, and New York makes it very prominent to find the net worth statement. And it's this horrible document. It's 13 pages, but by the time you're done with it, it's like 100 or 300, depending on how much disclosure you have. And really the only people I've found that actually enjoy that document are CPAs or accountants, because they like to have budgets and they like to go through numbers and things like that. But most people don't really like that. Getting a hold of that document, whatever you know you're going to have to exchange or disclose, really will give you a head start, because it'll get you thinking about things that are financial that you might not have thought about when you're sort of just planning, or when you're just sort of sitting there trying to make your own chart or list of things that you have in the marriage. So I think that's really a helpful thing to do.
The financial preparations are huge. I'm a CDFA, so I spend a lot of time working on disclosures with my clients.
So you like those forms?
I do. I was a CPA, and so, yeah. They're hard though, to be honest. When I was doing my own forms, it was a nightmare. Like, I mean, I wanted to stick my head in the sand. It was really difficult, and I am a numbers person. So even if someone is a numbers person, it's a huge lift to any time to do the financial disclosures. So, and it is true. Earlier you can get those going in your case, the better off you are to knowing what's out there. So
yeah, and I think it makes you feel a little bit more in control once you see, you know, this is the set of information that I need. This is what the court is going to be looking at, or a lawyer is going to be looking at. I think that puts some control back in your hands, so it doesn't feel so overwhelming.
I always equate it to, like, you know, doing your taxes the day before, or doing it in advance when you get organized. It feels so much better. You know, I have done both ways, and I can tell you that it's way better being prepared, right, in advance. So that's a really good point.
Yeah. I think what's really advisable is maybe not to put too much stock in things that you find on Google, because I will have people come to me for consultations, and you know, you can find lots of things on Google. You can't really diagnose yourself your medical issues by Googling them. Like, you can have some ideas, but you can't get that, you know, drill down detail unless you go to a doctor, and maybe you need an x-ray, whatever the testing you need. And the same is true for legal issues too. You know, you need an attorney to sort of take in all of your facts that are specific to your case, and then see what is going to happen based on the laws of that jurisdiction.
But not only the laws, but looking at the personalities involved. Like, I have this conversation with everyone. I'm like, you know, your case is a unicorn. Like, every case is unique. Whatever your cousin got, your brother, your sister, you know, and particularly when you're talking about like someone in New York versus California, we have very different, you know, divorce laws. I'm sure you absolutely see that between DC, Maryland, and New York, where you practice. You could probably name off 10 different things that are wildly different on those jurisdictions, right? Like, and how the process goes. And to your point of asking your clients about where their interest lies, right? Like, what do they want to get out of their divorce? What does the other side want to get out? I mean, it's two unique people also negotiating with different triggers and, you know, emotional baggage from their breakup in their relationship too, because who knows what happened, and whether they feel betrayed, or whether there is a high degree of trust and they can mediate, or whether, you know, there's money laundering going on in the background. I mean, every case, there's always some weird thing that pops up on every case I've worked on. Like, there isn't one that I'm like, oh, that looks like this case over here. Like, everyone is totally different.
I mean, and that's a great point. Well, those are two great points, actually. Number one, personalities. If there's already a case that's started, especially in New York, it's so contingent on who are the attorneys involved in the case, because attorneys can really drive a lot of additional conflict. And you really want to find someone who's not going to do that to you, but that doesn't mean your spouse has retained someone who's not going to drive the conflict. And then the personalities of the judges, you know, they really do have a lot of bearing on how judges are inclined to rule in different areas. And if you don't know what are the last few, you know, maybe temporary orders that judge has issued in similar circumstances to yours, you know, that's why you're going to the attorneys. That's why it's important that you go to an attorney in your area, because I may be telling you what might happen here, but it could be completely different in California, not just based on the law, but it could be a judge that has a completely different view, and is you know, there's a range in every statute. There's a range of things that can happen in the case law. You might have one that falls in this end of the range and then another one that's in this end of the range, right? So you need to know your judges, and then you need to know who the attorneys are to figure out that dynamic. And I think the other thing you said that was interesting is knowing what the other side wants. And I definitely like to get that sense, like, are there important things that you know your spouse is going to want out of this? And to the extent there are things that are not important to you, but are important to them, do we want to start listing those things right off the bat as being important to you for purposes of sort of a strategic negotiation later, where then you could say, okay, fine, I'll give up on that. And really, you're not giving up anything, but it's a small win for them. You know, it's a small win for the other side, and it can help negotiations go a little more smoothly. So,
Great technique. 100%. You know, and on that, Elka's, you know, we were talking, it's a lot of people are really afraid, not only to use lawyers, because, you know, the whole idea behind being in this legal battle, even though they're in it, is overwhelming, but it's also the cost. So, and, you know, you were talking about, you had mentioned also in social media, which I thought was brilliant, was that really lawyers are their fiduciaries. I mean, you're their clients, right? So what, you know, explain how, or what are some ways that a client can work with a lawyer just to mitigate some of the heavy costs? You know, what are some of the things that clients might do that they don't need to be doing?
Well, I'm sure you've seen this. I like to say the first 3 months of any case is like a roller coaster. The emotional roller coaster is happening, and you just feel incredibly needy. And you're going to call me multiple times a day for weeks on end, and then you're going to get your first invoice, and you're going to realize that I am a truly expensive therapist.
Yes.
And you don't want to waste your money that way. And it's not that I don't want to listen, and it's not that I don't think, you know, some of these things are important. And clearly, if we're just starting a case, sometimes there's more need to have more conversation. But to try to limit yourself when you're calling, or trying to set a timer on your phone so that you know, okay, I'm going to only speak to this attorney for 30 minutes because I'm mindful of the hourly cost and I don't want to hit that hour mark. Or, you know, try to, you know, have yourself pull yourself in and rein yourself in. And I think that's why having divorce coaches can be super important, because that's a way to, it seems like maybe it's an additional cost, but at the end of the day, you know, the math is going to be more favorable if you've, you know, vented at your divorce coach, you've come up with the strategy, you have these different things, and you know what, you've mapped out what you're going to say to your attorney, and then you call me and you're super focused, you have action items, and we can go through it. You're cutting down the time that you're spending with me, which will help in the cost.
Significantly. Yeah. No,
Yeah.
I do agree. I mean, it's one of those, you know, how many people that we know in our community and the people that we coach they were on speed dial. It's like, and I get it, because it's the only person you feel like could give you any answers. But we always say this, and I'm sure that you're also an advocate of this, is besides the law, let's leave the law aside, but only you know the answers to your own life, right? Like, you hold that key in so many ways, and you have to do that exploration within yourself to figure out what's really important, what's worth fighting for. You know, is it your fears that are driving you to this? Is it real, even your fears, you know? And so it's a lot. And when you're you're reliant on your lawyer to give you those answers. Your lawyer is only going to give you the answers that they know around the, the law, right? And it's like, in the end, like you said, you don't even know what's going to happen when it goes in front of a judge. So there's only so much you can build a case, but then the judge has ultimate decision if you're going to court, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
But yeah, it's the conundrum, but we always say that, and you're right. And it's good to know that's not to feel bad that you're reliant on them in the first 3 months, because it is quite normal and you are getting to know each other and it does happen, and just factor that in, but I love that, use a timer. It's so true. We don't even think about it.
I mean, I'm thinking about it. I'm using a timer when you're calling me.
Right.
I am billing
Right.
you hourly or in any increment of 15-minute increments. So I know exactly how long we've talked. You should
100%.
too.
You too.
You should too.
I agree. Mhm.
I think having a written agenda also when you're making those phone calls, so
Mhm.
keep to the script, right? So anytime I walk into an attorney meeting with my clients, I'm like, all right, we're covering this, and this. And we talk about it before the meeting and we stay on script. And when I watch them kind of veer off, I'm like, come back, we're
Mhm.
that part's not going to be important to your attorney, to your point about not using your attorney as a therapist.
Right.
So that's really important.
Okay, so now comes the little juicy part that
You had some interesting statistics around this.
yeah, that's what I saw that you had I actually wrote them down. So I do
Okay,
have,
good. Because I don't have them in front of me.
no, if you can't remember them, and you can speak to that, but it's really interesting because I saw that you were talking, and this is something that we have come across quite a bit in our community with our clients. Sexless marriages, the lack of intimacy, and people who've stayed in that for years on top of years, and in that conundrum of, should I stay, should I go, I don't know. And in some cases they even love their partner, but they're not getting fulfilled, and it's that conundrum of this. So there's that. And it was interesting because you went over some statistics, which was shocking, actually. So in 2017, I'm going to read it. Actually, I put it in my notes. 2017, 16% of marriages in the US were sexless. Right. And then in 2018, 1 in 4 relationships were. I mean, that's a big jump just in 1 year. And then that is in 2018. We haven't even gone, you haven't even seen the data after, during the pandemic, after pandemic, which it could have gone both ways for sure, because people were stuck with each other in the house, or it could have just exasperated every problem that they had before into a bigger one. So,
Right. I mean, I don't think that I think for healthy relationships, maybe, maybe they continued to have sex, or maybe they had more sex, but we were hearing during the pandemic that people were getting caught having, cyber affairs, emotional affairs. They were still cheating. So with that in mind, I have to think that it probably didn't, if you were in an unhealthy relationship, or you were already having struggles in that intimacy area, I don't know that the pandemic helped the relationship. I'm going to guess no.
No, there's definitely an increase also in divorce we're seeing
Oh yeah.
after the pandemic. So,
but
Yeah, but sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say it's an interesting thing. So when people, have that, and I don't know how many calls you get just with somebody who's just thinking about getting divorced, and there's should I stay to should I goers that are in that, stage of, I'm not happy, the intimacy is lacking. And that's a huge thing. Often more with women, I see that, but
I mean, I think it's also a difference. It's gendered, and I know this sounds so stereotypical, but I'll have female clients. They'll come in, and that may be one piece of what's going on that's wrong. But there are other things happening with lack of communication. There's an unequal distribution of the domestic labor. The mental load is falling squarely on her. And I'm sorry, but when you're having to lift all of that, domestic, plus you're doing a full-time job, plus you're, handling all of the childcare issues and all of those things, it pretty much is going to squash your sex drive, or it's going to squash your interest in the other adult in the house that is not contributing on an equal level. So there's a lot of that sort of discussion when I have female clients, but when I have male clients, sometimes they're just super blunt and they'll just be like, I haven't had sex in 7 years. And you're just like, okay. Well, okay, I guess that's the reason for the divorce then. All right. I like in their head, it's just very like quantifiable, like that's the number and I'm not happy and that's why I'm here. So
Very interesting, actually, concept, and it's so true. And you're right; it's not to generalize, how a woman, and female, and male operate, but they tend to be a little bit more black and white when you're a male, And so
right.
it's very, we haven't satisfied each other, and it's okay. It's all right to end a relationship when you're not satisfied, especially intimately. And there are a lot of factors: kids, family life. I mean, so much distraction. But there's a lot of fear around it. And I think, to your point, there's a lot of fear, especially as a mom. I know it's like, oh my God, and I'm not going to be able to see my children as much. I'm not going to do this. So you hold back a little bit more. You're hesitant to break a relationship around that.
There's a really great essay by Elizabeth Gilbert. It's called Not This. And it's posted, she has it posted on Facebook. It's from like 2016, maybe 2015, maybe even earlier than that. It may be pretty old actually, but I do send it to clients who are sitting on that fence and they don't know what to do, because it's that exact discussion of your body, your brain, your whole being is saying, not this. I can't do this, not this. And you can try to ignore that gut response to what you're doing. You can try to ignore it and people will ignore it successfully for years, but ultimately it's going to come out in some way, shape or form. It's coming out because that is what your true self is telling you is not this. This is not fulfilling. I can't do this anymore. And the people who embrace that, it's very risky because you don't know, well, what else is out there? What else is going to happen? What's the next story going to be of my life? What's the next chapter? But it's not this. And that's the important thing. You just have to sort of reconcile yourself to, well, this is not the thing that's making me happy. And, maybe the next thing might not be as fulfilling, or maybe it'll be worse, but maybe there's a possibility for it improving, for it being better, for you in reinventing yourself. And that's sort of the part of this process that I really love the most, is watching people go through this. And if they can effectively turn and face forward and stop looking in the past, stop walking backwards through life and just turn and face forward, they have so much potential to reinvent themselves and to do great things. This is not the end of the story.
No way. Amen to that.
We actually had a long conversation on our coffee talk this past Friday about people in our group. We had one woman in particular on that day that really had glowed up. Like you could see the lightness in her face, like everything just brightened, and the way she was talking, there wasn't a tremor in her voice anymore, and seeing her so much more empowered. And she's got a long ways to go, but it was really very cool to see. And I love that with the clients that we work with.
Because you see the progress, and I'm sure you do as well too. It's like, to your point, Heather, it's like they're broken and they're just like, I don't know what to do. And they're stuck and they're just a shell of themselves. And all of a sudden it's like, whoa, I got way more, I have so much to live. And you really do start seeing that. And incrementally it starts happening, which is even a better way, because you can't force it. You can't force you being okay right away. You do have to go through that healing journey. And
absolutely.
You need your lawyer, and you need your people around you who can help you through that and hold your hand in certain aspects that you might need your hand held. And that's okay. For sure.
And I mean, I recognize that's not, most attorneys are not going to necessarily all approach every client and start talking to them about their future goals or things like that. I do it just because I want to see that progress. I want to see people improving themselves. And I had this client years ago, one of my first clients, and he was just so depressed. His wife is the one initiated the divorce, and he was so depressed, and you could see it in his body language. He was just like slumped over. And, we started talking one day just about things that he always wanted to do with his life, things that he never had a chance to do. And he really started to sit straighter. He started to really just open up. Like, you could see it. It was like he bloomed. And he started talking about this vineyard that his cousin owned out in California, and how he always wanted to go there and help his cousin, and maybe, make a bed and breakfast, and all of these things. He just started, like, he turned into, from this like schlump whose life was over, to somebody who now has some new thoughts and things, unfinished business, and things that he wanted to do, and like things on his bucket list that he needed to get done. And it was just incredible, because people think divorce is so negative, and it really can be an opportunity for growth out of that. What is a sad thing, but it can be turned over to the positive.
100%.
So,
100%.
I think especially
But
I'm going to read that essay, the not this.
not
'cause
this, yeah.
In that situation, and you're like looking at your future. I was talking to someone, I'm like, they were like, I don't want to go through the rest of my life not making out with someone. Like, their thing was kissing, and
Mhm.
spouse was not someone who kissed. And this person was in their 40s and was like, I'm not going through the next 40 years without making out again. Like,
Yeah.
it was like, not this. And
Mhm.
think that then that person went on to find a way better relationship physically and emotionally for her. And it's great being able to see that change in life.
Yeah, not this article, it's not just directed, though, it's not about divorce entirely. It's about just when you're stuck making decisions and you don't know what to do. You just know it's not right. Something's
Right.
not right. It's not this. And that's what I love so much about it, because it really covers a lot of different areas. And I've sent it to friends who are having difficulties deciding what, career path to take, or should they buy a home, or, different things like that. But it's very helpful for clients, I've found, because it really does speak to that feeling like, maybe maybe this is safe. This is safe. Your brain's telling you it's safe. But your heart's telling you something different.
Right.
So, yeah.
Open your world to possibilities. Well, this is honestly a great conversation, and we're going to put all your details in the show notes, but you can work with people in New York, DC, and in Maryland, right?
I primarily am handling New York clients only, though. I'm overwhelmed with how many clients we have right now.
In New York, yeah, I can imagine. Okay, so and how can they get in touch with you? The best way is your email.
The best way is to email me to set up a time to have a consultation or something like that. But I have people contact me all the time through social media, through any of my social media.
Well, we're going to put your social medias for sure in the show notes, because people need to follow you. It's amazing. It's so fun and entertaining. I've learned a lot. I love it.
Thank you. It's such a hard line to walk as an attorney, being on social media, because I think we're all like, is this post going to get me sued?
I know. It's nice to have, just be naive about the whole situation. Most people are, and when you're a lawyer, for sure you're not. So, which is interesting, because, and I don't want to go into a whole nother conversation. We can leave it for another day, but being on social media while you're going through a divorce, whole nother thing too. It's like, watch what you need to watch if you want to watch it, but don't be posting a lot around that time.
Yeah, do not post, please don't post anything.
Don't post.
And then you can't delete anything either, because some states are very, very strict when it comes to the deletion of social media, because now it's evidence. So
Right.
whatever was happening on your social might be evidence in your case. You can change your passwords and maybe your privacy settings. So that is highly recommended. Change all passwords, change privacy settings. Even if you're changing it to like only me, it's still there, but it's not, someone like me is not going to find it.
Right. No, I 100%. I agree. And I mean, definitely follow you and listen to you and listen to us on social media. That's it. Just get educated, get information, and don't be, you know, posting anything and saying anything incriminating. So.
Yeah. Which is easier said than done. I had this amazing case where the client was, you know, he was saying that he didn't have any money, he couldn't pay, and I truly believed he was really suffering. And opposing brought in this exhibit, and it's this beautiful woman taking a selfie at a wedding in Israel. And then the next page is a zoom of right behind her, the crowd behind her talking. And it's my client with some champagne, hanging out with his friends, wearing a full tuxedo. And then the third page of the exhibit was a giant red arrow, as if it didn't get bad enough. Like, look, there he is. So you might even inadvertently be on someone else's social media, and it could come and harm you as only point. So it's really hard to get away from social media these days, but try to be mindful of it.
Yeah, or just, you know, be truthful. There's a start.
Yes, that's true. That's true.
Oh my God. This is such a good conversation and very insightful and great information. And you really have, you know, you helped to debunk this whole theory that all lawyers are scary. That's for sure.
Well, I definitely think, you know, people who are looking for attorneys, they want to look at reviews, obviously, but also I think look for attorneys who are willing to mediate. Look for attorneys who are willing to collaborate and also litigate. If you're just looking for, you know, a shark who's only going to litigate and they don't believe in mediation, I think a lot of times those people are less inclined to have discussions when settlement opportunities present themselves. They have a certain mode of operating that isn't always going to be the most friendly.
Right.
And like I said, and like you pointed out, you know, it's part of our fiduciary duty here to the client is to convince them you don't want to have that fight. You don't want to have every single fight because it's costly, and the fight might outweigh what you're getting back. And your lawyer needs to be talking to you about that and honest and upfront with the costs on the front end.
The return on investment part is so huge.
Mhm.
Just how much is it going to cost you to battle over that asset versus not, or that situation? I see that
Right.
happen.
And like, what is the point of that fight? Is the point of the fight to get something, or is the point of the fight to be right? Because if the point of the fight is to be right, it's probably not a good investment.
No, it's usually not.
We always say, like, what is it? Fair is the fair is the F word in divorce, right?
And 1 + 1 doesn't equal 2 in a divorce either.
That's right.
Never. See, I even know that, and I might not be as good as you in math. I got it. Well, thank you, Morgan, and I hope we continue having great conversations. It's been a pleasure to have you on Splitting Smart.
Yes. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. And for any of you guys who have been listening and you enjoy what you're listening and would like to stay on top of all our interviews, please sign up or press the subscribe button because we're on YouTube. That's right. And find us on social media, Split.fyi.